Good morning. In today's math lesson, we are going to order whole numbers and decimals. So that means we're going to put them in order from least to greatest. Let's look at example 1. It says the table shows the cost to build 3 National Football League stadiums. Order the costs of the stadiums from greatest to least. And of course, these numbers represent millions. So to build the Invesco Field Inglewood Stadium in Colorado, it was $364.2 million. The Ford Field Stadium in Detroit, Michigan, $430.5 million, and Quest Field Stadium in Seattle, Washington, $350.8 million. And we're supposed to compare these, find out which is the biggest, which is the smallest, so we can put them in order from least to greatest. Now, whenever you do that, you should follow these steps. The first thing you need to do is stack the numbers on top of each other. And the best way to do that is to line up all the decimals first. Line up the decimal points. So that way you end up putting all of the place value positions in the right spot. So you build the number around the decimal. So this one's 364 and 2/10. The next one is 430 and 5/10. And the next one is 350 and 8/10. And see, since we lined up the decimal points first, it made it so that we got all the place value positions stacked up on top of each other in the right place. So we have our hundreds place all in the same place, stacked on top of each other. Our tens place stacked up on top of each other. Our ones places stacked up on top of each other. And the tenths place for all three numbers are all stacked up on top of each other. Now it's easy to compare the numbers. We compare moving from the left to the right. So we start by comparing the hundreds place. Now, this one has a 3, this one has a 4, and this one has a 4. So we can all, and this one has a 3. So it's a 3, a 4, and a 3. So we can already tell this is going to be the biggest number. That one's going to go all the way over to the right in our list. So we're looking for the smallest one first because we're going from greatest to least. So we're actually looking for the biggest one first. So this is going to be first on our list because it has a 4 in the hundreds place, whereas this number and this number both have 3s in the hundreds place. So we're going to start by writing 430 and 5/10. And that's the biggest number. So we put the alligator mouth facing it. The alligator always wants to eat the largest number. Okay, so we're done with that one. Now we're comparing these two numbers. They both have a 3 in the hundreds place. This one has a 6 in the tens place, and this one has a 5. That's as far as we need to go. Moving over from the left to the right, once we find a larger number, we don't have to keep looking. So 364 and 2/10 is the second largest number. So it goes next in the list. The alligator mouth eats that number, and since there's only one number left, we know it goes last. 350 and 8/10 is the smallest number. So the stadium that was the most expensive to build was the Ford Field Detroit Stadium in Michigan. The one that was next most expensive is the Invesco Field Stadium in Inglewood, Colorado. And the least expensive one to build was the Quest Field Stadium in Seattle, Washington. Okay. Let's clear that and let's go on to the next example. Example 2. 4 trees in a state forest had heights of 22 and 65 hundredths feet, 23 and 8/10 feet, 22 feet, and 23 and 25 hundredths feet. Order the heights from least to greatest. Now, again, the first thing we do is we stack all the numbers on top of each other, lining up all the place value positions. And the best way to do that is to start by lining up the decimals. There's 4 numbers, so we're going to line up 4 decimals on top of each other. And then if you just build the numbers around the decimals, you'll get all the digits in the right spot. Whoops, that's not supposed to be a 5, that's supposed to be a 6. So 22 and 65 hundredths. Next, 23 and 8/10. And next, it's just 22. There's nothing in the tenths place or the hundredths place. And last of all, 23 and 25 hundredths. Now notice they don't all have the same amount of digits. This one is lacking a hundredths place digit, and this one here is lacking a tenths and a hundredths place digit. Now, to make them easier to compare, we can make it so they all have the same amount of digits, because remember, you can add zeros to the right of a decimal number and it doesn't change the value. So that means we can put a 0 right here, and it doesn't change the value of this number, but it does make it easier to compare because it has the same amount of digits. And 23 and 80 hundredths is the same value as 23 and 8/10, because adding zeros to the right of a decimal doesn't change the value. We can also add zeros here. They don't change the value, it's still just 22. 22 and 0 hundredths is the same thing as just 22. Now we compare the numbers so we can order them from least to greatest. We start by comparing the tens place because that's the largest place value position. And they're all 2s, so we have to move on to the next place value spot, the next place value position, which is the ones place. We have a 2, a 3, a 2, and a 3. So we know the smallest number has to either be this one or this one, because they both have a 2 in the ones place, whereas these 2 numbers have a 3 in the ones place. We have to keep going. So now we're only comparing these 2 numbers here, the 2 that have a 2 in the ones place. We have a 6 in the tenths place here and a 0 in the tenths place here. So this is the smallest number. So we start by putting 22. And now that we're putting it in order, we don't have to add the zeros to the right of the decimal point. This is the smallest one, and the alligator mouth doesn't eat it. It points away from it. The alligator mouth is eating the next number over because it always eats the larger number, and this is the smaller one. We can cross this number off now. And we already know this one will be the next smallest because it has a 2 in the ones place, whereas these both have 3s in the ones place. So 22 and 65 hundredths is the next smallest number, so we can cross that one off. And now we're comparing these 2 numbers. So they both have a 2 in the tens place, they both have a 3 in the ones place. This one has an 8 in the tenths place, whereas this one has a 2. Since 2 is smaller than 8, this is the smaller number. So next we're going to put 23 and 25 hundredths. And we can cross that off. And then we put the biggest number, which is 23. And here we have it written as 23 and 80 hundredths, but we can write it the same way it is here, 23 and 8/10. Okay, that's how you put numbers, decimal numbers, in order from either least to greatest or greatest to least. You simply stack them all up by lining up the decimals first, the decimal points first, then build the numbers around them so that you get all the place value positions lined up. Then you start comparing the digits, starting with the greatest place value positions and moving your way over to the right into the smaller place value positions. Okay, make sure you watch the guided practice video too, and I will catch you next time. Signing off.